afternoon from the National Weather Service office in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm meteorologist Donald Jones. You've made it to Wednesday afternoon, so you're officially halfway through the work week. Congratulations to you. Not so much for me because I'll be working through the whole weekend due to what you see behind me, the tropical disturbance that we've been talking about over the northeastern Gulf, which has been kind of meandering and moseying along for the last couple of days, and will continue to kind of move from east to west across the area. Now, this is the storm we've been talking about that is going to bring us the potential for some flash flooding as we go through the latter part of the week. Now, the good news is the rainfall, the forecast rainfall totals have come down a little bit from where they were this time yesterday, and that's mainly due to the fact that this still remains a very disorganized and frankly kind of ugly system. I'm whispering like it hears me. But yeah, this system really hasn't gotten its act together at all. It's mainly been over the Florida Peninsula through much of last night and early this morning. And now the center of circulation is actually kind of sitting right along the Florida Panhandle. So it's so close to land that it really hasn't had an opportunity to get its act together in any meaningful way. And as long as it stays right along the coast here, it's not really going to have much opportunity to do so. Now, there is the possibility it could sink a little bit further to the south, or that center of circulation may reform a little bit as we go through the rest of the day today and into tomorrow. But as long as it stays close to the coastline there, it's really not going to be anything to worry about, at least not at this point from a terms of a wind perspective. We are still, though, going to be looking at quite a bit of rainfall, regardless of whether the storm actually develops. Now, the National Hurricane Center continues to give it about a 40% chance of development anytime basically from tonight to tomorrow. Once we get through, say, about tomorrow afternoon, the storm is then going to be moving inland, so we're not going to have to worry about any kind of development for there. Regardless, though, it's still a very tropical air mass. It's a very moist, humid air mass. Somebody was talking to me the other day about using the word moist. This is an opportunity where moist is not that weird, awkward word, but it's actually used to measure the amount of humidity in the atmosphere. It's a very moist air mass, and that's going to result in a lot of rain. So we're going to talk about all that here over the next few minutes, as well as exactly how much rain to expect across the area. As always, this is a live interactive briefing. So feel free to post your questions and comments as we go through our briefing, and I'll be happy to answer them just as soon as we wrap up the me talking part, which is pretty much all of it. But I'll give you an opportunity to talk back here in just a moment. So again, we do have that tropical disturbance across the northeastern Gulf. The National Hurricane Center continues to give it about a 40% chance of development tonight into tomorrow. Regardless of development, though, we are going to be looking at 3 to 6 inches of rain, with some areas seeing up to 8. It wouldn't surprise me, actually, to see even higher rainfall rates than that in a couple of locations. Anywhere we get those kind of bands that kind of train over the same area for hours and hours on end, it's not out of the realm of possibility where we could see anywhere in the range of 12 to 15 inches in a few localized spots. That's not going to be everywhere, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if a couple of places do see that here, essentially from this evening through Saturday evening. This is a little bit bigger look at the visible satellite this afternoon. The center of circulation is somewhere up in here. Let me see if I can find my little writing utensil here, and I can draw pretty pictures on the map here. It's going to be somewhere up in here, I believe. It's just going to be either right just off the coast of the Florida Peninsula or Florida Panhandle, or maybe just a few miles inland. So it's right there on the edge. And most of the computer models just kind of have it hugging the coastline pretty much all the way from east to west, before moving inland somewhere across southeast Louisiana tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening. Now, as long as it stays right on the coast, like we said, it's going to stay very, very weak. It's going to have to get a few dozen miles offshore, that center of circulation, before it has any hope of getting any kind of development together. But you can see all the cloud cover here out to the west. There's actually been some pretty strong storms off the coast of southeast Louisiana earlier on today. This is all going to be gradually moving inland as we go through the night tonight and into tomorrow. And this is going to be a fairly slow moving system. So we're going to be dealing with it essentially from this evening all the way through late Saturday evening before it finally actually dissipates. It's not going to move off so much as it is just going to fill in and kind of dissipate over the area. So roughly about 3 days of rainfall potential that we're going to be dealing with this system, and that will potentially cause some significant flash flooding across the region. Again, 40% chance of development from the National Hurricane Center with this system. That hasn't changed really since about this time yesterday, or actually yesterday morning. And I don't think it's probably not going to get much higher than that. I really don't see a whole lot of a future for this system beyond just heavy rainfall. Could it become a tropical depression? Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility. But even if it does and gets that designated number, it doesn't get a name until it's a tropical storm. Even if it gets that designated number, it's really not going to mean anything different in terms of what kind of impacts we're going to have across our area. The heavy rainfall threat is going to be the biggest effect, regardless of whether it's just a disturbance or a tropical depression or even a low-end tropical storm. We're really not talking about anything related to a significant wind threat with this system. Same thing with tornadoes. We're not really expecting much in the way of a tornado threat with this system just because of how weak and sloppy it is. And then, of course, without the winds, you don't have the storm surge. So rain is really the only name of the game with this disturbance as it moves from east to west across the northern Gulf Coast. So again, we talked about this the last couple of days. What's continuing to drive this is there's an area of high pressure out here, something along kind of like that, big H. And then our disturbance is here, somewhere in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. That is a terrible looking L, make an L. So essentially this is kind of building in from east to west. So it's gradually been moving over more and more here. And that's going to push this system to the west. And then the clockwise motion of the winds wrapping around this high are eventually going to pull it to the north. There's actually a little bit of a high pressure area up this. So it's actually something more like that. So that's why this system is going to turn, but it's going to gradually slow down as it bumps into this high pressure area. And that's why it's going to eventually dissipate somewhere across southern or central Louisiana, because it's really going to be blocked off by that high pressure. If this was a slightly stronger storm, something that was going to stick with us for a longer period of time, that very slow moving tropical nature could result in some extremely high rainfall totals. As it is, it's going to dissipate pretty much in place. So that's going to limit the upper end of how much rainfall we can expect to see. But this is still going to cause a flash flood threat. The biggest risk, I think, right now, we're going to be for south central and southeast Louisiana. As we go a little bit further to the west into southeast Texas, those rainfall totals are not going to be quite as high. I'll talk about that here in more detail in just a second. Sea surface temperatures are still plenty warm enough. So if that storm can get offshore, the sea surface temperatures are favorable for development. We're still looking at mid to upper 80s across most of the Gulf of Mexico. And it's actually particularly warm right along the immediate coast, upper 80s, right along the coastline there where it's a little bit shallower. But still looking at very favorable conditions across the Gulf. Wind shear is still relatively low. It's not zero, so there is a little bit of wind shear. That's also kind of working against it. But it is generally low enough that we could see some development if that center of circulation can get off the coast. Like I said, it's probably going to be a few dozen miles for it to actually get off. So conditions overall are generally favorable for development if that system can get back out over water for an appreciable length of time. We do have a flash flood watch in effect. This hasn't changed from yesterday. It's going to go into effect actually 7 a.m. tomorrow morning until 7 p.m. Saturday evening. And this is going to be for Vermilion, Acadia, Evangeline, St. Landry, Lafayette, St. Martin, Iberia, and St. Mary parishes. And that is where I think the highest overall flash flood risk is going to exist, kind of there and points further east. You see the flash flood watch covers all of southeast Louisiana as well. Back over to where we're at in Lake Charles, southeast Texas, you're going to get some rain out of this. You could potentially get several inches of rain out of this, but the overall risk is a little bit lower the further west you go compared to south central Louisiana. So that remains in effect. I don't initially think that this is going to be expanded too far to the west. We'll see how the computer models come in between now and tomorrow. But that flash flood watch is the same as it was yesterday, and I don't see an immediate need to expand that at this point. This is a look at our latest forecast rainfall totals. I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen so you can kind of take a little bit closer look at your particular location. So you can see these numbers have come down a little bit from when we were talking this time yesterday, as has the potential worst case scenarios, which I'll show you here next. But generally speaking, for southeast Texas, looking at anywhere between about 1 and 3 inches of rain. For western Louisiana, we're looking at anywhere between about 2 and 4 inches. And then over towards south central Louisiana, where that flood watch is in effect, looking at between about 4 and 6 inches expected. Now, within that, where we get these rain bands set up, we could be looking at some noticeably higher numbers. And that is what we call our worst case scenario. And that is the next graphic I'm showing here. So you can see in a worst case scenario, essentially what this means is that in 90% of cases, or 9 out of 10 cases, the amount of rainfall that we're going to see is going to be this or less. Okay, and that's what we're talking about when we say it's our worst case, our reasonable worst case scenario. So you can see the little disclaimer at the bottom that there's a 10% chance that rainfall totals will be higher than these amounts, but a 90% chance that they'll be at or lower than these amounts. So for Southeast Texas, we're looking at between about 3 and 6 inches of rain. And again, that's not going to occur everywhere, but there could be a few spots that get one of those rain bands training over the area that could result in as much as 6 inches of rainfall. For western Louisiana, pretty much the same thing. We're looking anywhere between 4 to 6 inches. That's the highest that we can reasonably expect to see. And then south central Louisiana, 6 to 8. Now, that 10% chance of seeing more than that is going to come in where we have those rain bands that set up and train over the same area. Anytime we have those bands setting up constantly, we can be looking at anywhere from 10 to possibly on the highest end 15 inches of rain. That would be comparable to, a lot of people have been asking me, is this going to be something like the 2016 flood? I'm not going to say it necessarily is going to be for any specific location, but there is the possibility of seeing something on the order of that magnitude somewhere across south central or southeast Louisiana. It's not going to be everywhere, and it's not going to be necessarily the exact same people that experienced the worst of it in 2016. But it's still going to be something that is going to be a possibility somewhere. But generally speaking, the rainfall totals are going to be a little bit lower, between about 2 to 6 inches of rain, depending on exactly where you are. Lower totals for southeast Texas, higher totals over towards south central Louisiana, which is where the maximum rainfall totals are going to be. This is a look at our latest excessive rainfall outlooks. This is basically the probability of seeing flash flooding, and there is a low-end probability of flash flooding as early as late this evening. This is for today, but it's mainly for this evening into tonight once those rain bands start to move in across south central and southeast Louisiana. So that's roughly about a 5% chance. The area is highlighted in green, a 5% chance to a 15% chance of seeing flash flooding within 25 miles of those locations. So that covers pretty much all of southeast Louisiana as well as south central Louisiana. So New Iberia down towards Morgan City, you are going to be looking at a low-end risk of flooding tonight. Now, I think the much better chances are going to be Thursday into Friday. You can see we bring the yellows onto the screen for Thursday. That is a slight risk. So that's a 15 to 40% chance of seeing flash flooding within 25 miles of a location. That basically extends from Lake Charles east to Lafayette down towards Morgan City and most of southeast Louisiana, essentially on both sides of Lake Pontchartrain. This also includes Baton Rouge. So a higher risk of flooding tomorrow. That would make sense because we're continuing to see rainfall. And then an even higher risk of flooding as we go into Friday. We bring in the moderate risk, which is essentially a 40 to 70% chance of seeing flash flooding within 25 miles of any given location. And you can see that includes pretty much all of southwest and south central Louisiana. So that does include Lake Charles, up towards Alexandria, Lafayette, New Iberia, down towards Morgan City, even into extreme eastern parts of southeast Texas. You can see it just clips the eastern half of Orange County and Newton County there. So, the highest risk, I think, for flooding just as a whole for this event is going to be on Friday, which makes sense. Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to kind of prime the ground. We're going to get those first rounds of rain that are going to saturate soils and get water in the area waterways, the rivers and lakes. And then as we go into Friday and continue to see more and more rainfall, that flash flood risk is going to go up. By Saturday, the flash flood risk kind of begins to come back down again because the majority of the storm should be starting to die out. We're still looking at pretty high rain chances on Saturday, 70, 80%. But it's going to be a little bit more isolated than what we're going to see on Friday. And then by Saturday evening, most of the rainfall should be out of here. Not ruling out a couple of showers, maybe Saturday night into early Sunday morning, but the vast majority of it should be out of here by then. And then actually, as we go into early next week, Sunday through about Tuesday, we're going to have an area of high pressure actually build in. So our rain chances are going to go below normal. We're not going to see as many of those daily afternoon thunderstorms. So that'll be some good news in the fact that it's going to give us a chance to dry out and let some of that water run out of the rivers. But at the same time, it's going to get very hot again. So we're going to be looking at highs in the mid to upper 90s Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday next week. That's the price we pay for a lack of rainfall this time of year. And then I took a quick look at the forecast going into kind of the latter part of next week. And there looks like there's another area of low pressure that's going to be coming in across Florida into the northeastern Gulf. So we may be looking at something of a repeat scenario of this about this time next week. At least that's what the long-range forecast is showing. So just something to kind of keep in mind with that. So that's what we have here from the National Weather Service this afternoon. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in our comment section. I'll be happy to go through them here over the next little while. If not, we are going to do another one of these briefings tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. once again. We'll move that up if the storm does intensify, if it gets a tropical depression or a tropical storm designation and we get a forecast track. Then we'll move that up to accommodate the National Hurricane Center and how they put out their forecast. They do a forecast at 10 a.m. And 4 p.m., so we'll adjust accordingly for that. But assuming this remains a weak, disorganized system, we'll plan to do another one of these tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. So let me go ahead and I'm going to bounce back to the rainfall graphic here because that's the story of the day by far. And I'll check to see if we do have any questions. Go ahead and throw them in, and I'll be happy to answer them here over the next little while. Let's see. Haley asked, do near Beaumont, Texas have to worry about? Okay. Do near Beaumont, Texas have to worry about? No, do not Beaumont, Texas. No. You are not under the flood watch, but we are going to be looking at the potential for some intermittent periods of heavy rain. You can see our official forecast right now shows 2 to 3 inches expected over Beaumont. Now, that is over a 3-day period. It's not going to happen all immediately at once. This is from Thursday through Saturday. So it'll be kind of on and off, most likely, across southeast Texas and the Beaumont area. But these storms are going to have the potential to produce very heavy tropical rainfall. If you were watching yesterday, we talked about those big tropical raindrops that happens, and that can cause some flooding very, very quickly. So even though you're not under the flood watch right now, you're not necessarily completely out of the woods. You can see we're looking at, in a worst case scenario, up to 4 to 6 inches of rain. And if that 4 to 6 inches of rain falls over just a few hours, you could be looking at some low end flooding for the Beaumont area. So no, you're not out of the woods, but the main risk, just like with everywhere else, continues to be the potential for flash flooding. Don loved my beautiful L drawing. Thank you, Don. See, I'm an artist. I'm an artist too. In addition to my side job here is forecasting the weather. Mesa? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Is Lake Charles in the clear? No, Lake Charles is not in the clear from the potential rainfall and flash flood risk. Now, Lake Charles also is not under a flash flood watch at this point, but there is still the possibility we could be looking at some significant rainfall totals. Official forecast right now is for 2 to 3 inches, but on the high end, we could be looking at 4 to 6 inches. So Lake Charles is in the clear from a wind perspective, as is pretty much everybody else. We're not expecting this to be a significant wind event. We're not going to have hurricane force winds. We're not going to have, most likely not going to have tropical storm force winds. It's not completely out of the realm of possibility that we could see a gust to 40 miles an hour. But I think that's fairly unlikely at this point. So not a wind threat, not a surge threat right now, not a tornado threat. It's just going to be a rain threat. Kay asked, will it likely be named a storm or no? Right now, the Hurricane Center gives it a 40% chance of developing it into a tropical system. That could be just a tropical depression, or it could be a tropical storm. I think tropical depression is probably more likely. If it was made just a tropical depression, it would get a number instead of a name. It doesn't get a name until it's a tropical storm, and you have to have sustained winds of at least 39 miles per hour or greater to get that name. So I don't think it's going to become a named storm. It may become a tropical depression that gives it a number, but I think time's running out for it to actually become a tropical storm. Ibrahim asks, could this storm close schools that operate year-round? I don't think that there's going to be a lot of schools that are going to close as a result of this. I haven't heard of any so far. Again, the big issue is going to be the potential for rainfall. So if an area gets a lot of rainfall, there may be kind of a real game time decision about closing schools early. But just based on the rainfall alone, I don't think a lot of schools are going to close. Now, that's not my decision to make. That's just my opinion. But from what I've seen here and from what I've been talking to with our partner groups with the school boards, it's probably not very likely that they're going to do that unless they start actively seeing flooding. Sleepy Eye Jones, I'm Sleepy-Eye Jones sometimes. Says, what about Cameron? Cameron's going to see rain, 2 to 3 inches. It's very difficult, and I'm getting a lot of questions about Cameron lately, but it's very difficult for Cameron to flood because of how marshy the surrounding area is. All the water just runs off into the marsh. So it would take extremely high rainfall rates and extremely high amount of rainfall for Cameron to experience any appreciable flooding. Now, if we were talking about a storm surge type event, if this was a hurricane, then Cameron would be much more susceptible to flooding due to storm surge. But we're not expecting that in this case. This is just going to be strictly a rainfall event, and it's very difficult to see flooding in Cameron Parish in general with just freshwater rain or freshwater flooding, as we call it. Angela says, are we safe in a camper in Gonzales Lake? I don't know where Gonzales Lake is exactly, but again, this is not a wind issue, so you're fine from that perspective. Now, if you see some flooding, that could be an issue, but you don't have anything to worry about from a wind perspective. Natalie asks, when should the rain be starting tomorrow? I keep seeing different times. I need to travel early morning. It depends on where you're at. If you're down towards the Morgan City, New Iberia area, you're probably going to be looking at storms beginning late this evening. So it'll be ongoing in the morning. If you're here in Lake Charles, you're not going to be looking at the rain really getting going until probably about noontime or a little after that. So it's going to, exactly where you're at is going to play a large role in what time the storms begin. We may see a light shower here in Lake Charles early in the morning, but I think it's not really going to get going until sometime afternoon in Lake Charles. Same thing up towards Alexandria. If you're going to see it, it's not going to be most likely until the afternoon. For Southeast Texas, it might be even later than that, more like late afternoon tomorrow to get going. So, it's going to start further to the east across Southeast Louisiana and then gradually work its way west. For South Central Louisiana, we're looking at probably late tonight. For Southwest Louisiana, we're probably looking at mid to late morning tomorrow, probably right around the noontime hour or thereabouts. Ashley asks, how about travel I-10 Thursday evening from Houston to Avery Island? Thursday evening from Houston to Avery Island, you're going to be wet. We're going to be looking at very high rain chances at that point. We may be looking at some flooding, especially as you get closer to Avery Island. That's going to be where we're expecting the most rain to occur. So there is certainly going to be the possibility of some flooding down that way Thursday evening. Dwight asked, Morgan City, when to expect rainfall and flooding? Again, you're probably going to see down that way. You're going to see some showers rolling in this evening into tonight, and then continuing through the day tomorrow. The flood risk, the flash flood, the flood watch, I should say, is in effect from 7 a.m. 7 a.m. Thursday through 7 p.m. Saturday. So that's when we would expect the possibility of flooding. I can't tell you exactly when it's going to begin because I can't tell you exactly when the storm is going to move over your area. Meteorology is just not that good, but the risk time frame is going to be from Thursday morning through Saturday evening. Summer asks, should we be concerned about tornadoes or just a lot of rain? Just a lot of rain. We're not expecting this to be a tornado threat at this point. Amber wants to know if schools are going to be closed. She had to be funny. Ha ha, Amber, you're freaking hilarious. Summer schools are ongoing, so someone had to correct me on that because the other day I said that, no, schools are out. We don't have to get that question. But no, you're right. There are some summer schools that are ongoing. Will those be closed? Like I said earlier, probably not. That's just my opinion. I haven't heard anything official. That's not my decision to make, but I would be mildly surprised if they were. Tina asks, do you happen to know if or when anything might change in golf? I'm not sure how to answer this question. Yeah, things could change in the Gulf. They're not, our forecast is our forecast because we think that's what's going to happen. Could it change? Yes. Is it likely to change? I don't think so. Timmy asks, have they flown a plane in to check it out? There was a flight scheduled for 1 o'clock this afternoon. They canceled that flight because the storm is, it's right along the coast or inland. It's very disorganized. It's clear that it's not a tropical depression or tropical storm at this point. So they decided not to waste the fuel and putting a plane up in the air. So saved you a few tax dollars. By that, there is another flight scheduled for tomorrow. Whether that actually goes out or not is going to depend on what kind of shape it looks like. By the time we get there tomorrow morning, that decision will be made. So there is a plane scheduled to go out again tomorrow, but the one today was canceled because it was very clear that this was not a strong tropical system. So Sarah says, I missed it. What about Iberia Parish? Iberia Parish is, again, it's all about the rain. We're going to be looking at 4 to 6 inches of rain in Iberia Parish, and a few spots may see even higher than that. Here's our worst case scenario. 6 to 8 inches of rain is not out of the realm of possibility for Iberia Parish. Not going to be a wind threat, not going to be a surge threat, and not going to be a tornado threat. This is all going to be a rain threat. Sujay, has the Saharan dust come and gone? I thought those clouds hinder storm formations. They do, and it's kind of being intermixed. There is some dry air mixing into this system. Let me actually see if I can pull back to the satellite view and give you an idea. So, I mean, conditions are generally favorable. You see there's a clear slot down here. You can actually see there may be a little bit of Saharan dust in there right there. That Saharan dust was always expected to move off to the north, but there is a little bit still kind of mixed around in that, and some dry air that it would have to overcome if it was going to become anything really strong. I don't think it has enough time to even really worry about that because, it's going to be inland by this time or shortly thereafter tomorrow. So this is not going to, the Saharan dust does tend to inhibit storm development, but this thing has a lot more working against it than just the Saharan dust. It's got a lot of land to work with. Natalie says, does anyone know the timeline for the path for this storm, when the rain will start? I think I already answered your question, Natalie, but again, it's going to depend on exactly where you're at. For South Central Louisiana, we're looking at it beginning late this evening. For Southwest Louisiana, here in the Lake Charles area, we're probably looking at around midday tomorrow for that rain to begin. Same thing up towards Alexandria, and then probably kind of mid to late afternoon for Southeast Texas. Melina asks, have you seen the models of this hinting at a loop-de-loop? No, most of the models that we've seen have it. Basically, let me come back to my chart here, or my satellite image, so I can draw pretty pictures. Again, somebody liked my low earlier. So essentially what this is going to do, it's right about here. It's going to continue roughly in a straight line. It may be a little bit higher here. It may be a little bit lower here. But we're generally doing this. And then it's eventually going to kind of slowly curve. And it's going to be moving very, very slow. It's going to get up there somewhere, say around Alexandria or thereabout. And then it's going to just kind of stall out and dissipate. We're not expecting any kind of loop-de-loops. It's not going to get back into the Gulf. And re-intensify and all that jazz. This is going to, there's a lot of really good agreement with the models that it's going to kind of continue generally to the west, maybe ever so slightly south of west. We'll see how far it gets offshore. That's going to play a role in whether it actually becomes a depression or not. But then it's going to move inland and die essentially. So no, we're not really concerned about any kind of loop-de-loop. Jeff asks, what is the latest worst-case rainfall accumulation scenario for Lafayette to include possible flooding of the Vermilion River? There it is. All right, let me go ahead and make this full screen again so you can take a good look at it here. We're generally looking at anywhere between, this is, again, our worst-case scenario. So 90% of the time, we expect the rainfall totals to be this or less. So we're looking at 6 to 8 inches or less for the Lafayette area. Is that enough to cause river flooding? Yes, absolutely, especially if it falls in a short period of time. So yeah, that will be a concern. We don't have we do forecasts for the rivers, but it's very difficult when we're talking about this kind of precipitation to identify exactly where it's going to fall, what watershed it falls into, and that determines what river it's going to run off into. So that's even more difficult than predicting how much rain we're going to get, is how much is going to run off into a particular waterway. But suffice to say that, yes, if we get anything close to this, there will be the risk of river flooding. Stacy's driving from Lake Charles to Covington on Friday at 9 a.m. Any predictions for that time? Yes, it's going to be raining. It's going to be raining probably across most of the entire state, and that we will be looking at the risk of some flooding during that time as well. Corey's asking, what are the temperatures going to be like? The good news is the temperatures, because of all the rain, are going to be lower than normal. So we'll be looking at high temperatures probably in the mid to upper 80s, both tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. And then it's going to heat back up for Sunday as this storm gets out of here. Caden's asked, hey, Donald, would you consider this a snack buying emergency? I wouldn't call it an emergency necessarily, but snack buying preparedness would be perfectly acceptable. Yes, any excuse to buy snacks. I'm here for it. I actually brought some snacks here into our office, not because I think we're going to get flooded in, but just because we needed a break. Pamela is banging her head on the wall with some of these questions. I'm right there with you, except if I bang my head on the wall right now, I'd probably get a concussion and pass out, and y'all would all laugh at me. So I'm not going to do that. But I'm with you. Nonetheless, we're going to answer them because I'm a nice guy that way. Billy says, I just had knee surgery at 11 a.m. and the first thing I asked for was my phone so I could see what Donald Jones was saying. I think I should be flattered by that, Billy. Marcy's gently reminding me Gulf of America. Did I say it wrong? Did I say Gulf of Mexico? It's the Gulf of whatever it is down there. Gulf of big body of water south of here that the storm is trying to form in. Nisha asks, is there any advice for St. John Parish area? We don't actually cover St. John Parish. I think you're talking about St. John the Baptist Parish, or is there a separate St. John? I'm not even sure. Either way, that's going to fall into the Weather Service office in Slidell. So I don't have details for that, and it's not because I don't want to give them to you. It's because we have to focus on a very specific area. So the Weather Service office in Slidell covers them, and they'll have, or y'all will have, very detailed information about that. So contact them, and they can give you exact forecasts for rainfall and such. Anthony says it will never be a tropical storm or depression. It's just rain, people. Well, there's a 40% chance that it could become a depression. I think a storm might be a little bit of a pipe dream at the moment. I think it's pretty unlikely for that. Either way, it's going to be just rain. You know, it might be rain with a little bit of wind gusts in it, or it might just be rain. Either way, rain is the big issue. You're right about that. And our just answered Amber's question, will there be any wind to worry about? No, not at this point. You know, if it does get its act together a little bit more, you might have a wind gust, 25, 30 miles an hour. You know, if this is made a tropical depression, say it's a 30 or 35 mile an hour tropical depression, those 30 or 35 mile an hour winds are over water. Once it actually moves inland, those winds are going to be even lower. So yeah, it may be a little breezy out there, but this is not going to be something that's going to cause damage from a wind perspective. Keely says, can't deny we're all a little on edge considering the crazy flash flooding that's been happening. We're very familiar with flash flooding in this part of the world too. So, I mean, while it has been, you know, all over the news recently, you know, this is something that a lot of us have dealt with at one time or another here in Southeast Texas, Southwest Louisiana. You know, I've lost track of how many times Beaumont has flooded over the years that I've been here. So it's something we are familiar with. I realize that it's a little nerve-wracking, but it is something that we've unfortunately had a lot of experience with. Julie says, I'm going to Baton Rouge Friday morning. Rain, flooding, yes. Rain, yes. Flooding, possibly. That area is under a flood watch, and that will continue through Friday morning. Abby wants the storm to do a little razzle-dazzle. She's wanting their office to close, but no one to get hurt or property damage. Unfortunately, you usually don't get one without the other. And if you do, then I wind up getting yelled at because I told people to close unnecessarily and all of that. So I'm hoping for no property damage or people getting hurt, but I also hope that your office doesn't close, because then it's my fault if it does. Ruby asks, could the so-called center relocate? Well, there is something of a center there, so it's a little more than so-called, but could it relocate? Yes, it's very intermittent as it is right now. So could it relocate further to the south from where it is right along the coast? Yeah, absolutely. Would that make a big difference? Probably not a huge difference. It may give it an opportunity to become that tropical depression, but I don't think it's going to make a huge difference in the long term with what the impacts are actually going to be. Blue asks, will New Orleans get a lot of rain? Yeah, New Orleans is forecast to get several inches of rain. Again, the Weather Service office in Slidell covers them, so they'll have more details than I do. But the New Orleans area is forecast to get a lot of rain. I think they're already seeing some showers move through there this afternoon. Kim asks, Orange to Galveston, do we need to worry about high tides and flash flooding here, especially with all that's been going on in the rivers already full? Tides, not so much, because again, we're not talking about this being a wind maker. And even if it was, you're well on the left side of where the storm's going to wind up. So your winds are going to be out of the north. So no, we're not expecting there to be any kind of a tide or surge threat. From a flood perspective, the orange area possibly could see, depending on exactly where those bands line up. I don't think you're going to have a significant enough rainfall amount as far west as Galveston to pose a flood threat, though. Or even orange is going to be on the low end. So we're looking at, officially right now, we're forecasting 2 to 3 inches for the orange Texas area. You can see as we go further to the west back towards Galveston, that falls to under an inch. So we're really not expecting much back towards Galveston. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up for the time being. If you have a question that I missed for some reason, or you think of one once you get off of our live briefing here, feel free to send us a direct message on Facebook. I've been answering them all morning. I'll be happy to answer yours. You can also email me directly. My email's on your screen there in the bottom right-hand corner. It's my name, Donald.Jones at NOAA.gov. I'll be happy to answer your question that way. You can also give us a call here at our office, area code 337-477-5285. It's also on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Those phones are open 8 to 4. They used to be 24 hours, not so much anymore, but still we can answer your questions for another hour and 20 minutes. And then you'll have to call tomorrow otherwise. But social media is always available. Send us a message on Facebook, send us a message on X, send us a message on Instagram, send us a message on Smoke Signals, and we'll be happy to answer your questions that way if we did miss it. Again, we are going to do another one of these briefings tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m. It will be earlier if the storm does intensify and gets a name or becomes a tropical depression with a track. Otherwise, we'll plan to be back here 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon for another update at that time. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe, stay dry, stay cool, stay wonderful. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow, 2 o'clock.